Welcome to our deep dive today. You sent over some really fascinating excerpts from The Year I Met My Brain by Matilda Boseley.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be super helpful for anyone listening who is maybe newly diagnosed with ADHD
Mm.
or suspects they might have it.
It's a great starting point for understanding this complex condition, and what struck me is how the book situates ADHD
Right.
within this broader concept of neurodiversity.
Yeah, that really resonated with me too.
Yeah.
It's like instead of viewing certain ways of thinking as abnormal or, wrong, somehow
Right.
we're starting to appreciate that brains just work
Yeah.
differently.
Exactly. Neurodiversity recognizes that there's no one-size-fits-all model for brain function.
Right.
Conditions like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, they're not just disabilities,
Right.
but rather different ways of experiencing and interacting with the world.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the strengths that come with those differences too.
Absolutely.
So where does ADHD fit into all of this?
Well, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition
Okay.
characterized by persistent patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity
Right.
that interfere with daily life.
And it's way more common than many people think, which is something the book really drives home.
Yes.
I was surprised to learn that it affects about 2.5 to 3% of adults globally.
Yeah, about as common as having red hair,
Wow.
which really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
It's crucial to address the misconception that ADHD is a trendy diagnosis.
Right.
The increase in diagnosis is likely due to greater awareness and understanding,
Yeah.
not a sudden spike in cases.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, the book also dives into the different flavors of ADHD.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that? I think it's helpful for people to understand that
Right.
ADHD can present in different ways.
Of course. The book highlights the three main presentations of ADHD,
Okay.
each with its own unique set of characteristics.
Okay.
Let's start with predominantly inattentive type, known as ADHD. As the name suggests, it's primarily characterized by difficulties with focus, organization, staying on task.
This is the type that often flies under the radar, right?
Yes, exactly.
Especially for women, as the book points out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Societal expectations and gender roles can sometimes mask ADHD in girls and women,
Right.
leading to misdiagnoses and delayed support,
Yeah.
which can create a huge burden in terms of managing relationships,
Right.
family life,
Yeah.
and work responsibilities.
It's like they're trying to juggle a dozen balls while everyone else has like half as many.
Yeah.
And the book has that great example of how society tends to be more accepting of a messy young man's apartment
Yes,
than a messy young woman's,
Yeah.
even though they might both have ADHD.
exactly. It highlights those unconscious biases we often have
Yeah.
about how ADHD should look.
Right.
The book also delves into racial and cultural biases and diagnoses.
Yeah.
For example, it shares a story of Emily, a woman of color whose ADHD was mislabeled as having behavioral issues rather than receiving appropriate support.
That was such a powerful example of how systemic biases can impact access to care and accurate diagnosis.
Yes.
It's so important to be aware of these disparities.
Absolutely. Now, moving on to the second presentation,
Right.
we have predominantly hyperactive impulsive type, or ADHD-HI.
Okay.
This type is less common and is characterized by, as you might guess, excessive energy, fidgeting, difficulty controlling impulses,
Right.
and sometimes even risk-taking behaviors.
That brings to mind the author's hilarious story about spontaneously deciding to go paragliding
Oh, yeah.
and then realizing midair
No.
that she hadn't planned for the landing.
Yeah.
It made me laugh out loud.
It perfectly illustrates how impulsivity can manifest in
Yeah.
unexpected ways.
For sure.
Now, the most common presentation,
Okay.
especially among those seeking treatment,
Okay.
is the combined type, or ADHD-C.
Okay.
This type encompasses a mix of both inattentive and hyperactive impulsive traits.
So someone with ADHD-C might be wrestling with focus and organization while also struggling to control their impulses.
Exactly.
Like a double whammy.
Exactly. The book doesn't shy away from diving into the science behind these experiences.
Right.
It does a great job of explaining the role of dopamine and noradrenaline in ADHD.
Yeah, I loved how the book used that analogy of Ethel, the executive function lady,
Yes.
to make this complex neuroscience more relatable.
Yeah.
It really helped me grasp how those brain chemicals,
Right.
or as the book calls them, Ethel's dopamine biscuits and noradrenaline coffee, are essential for executive function.
It's such a clever way to explain it. Executive function is basically our brain's control center,
Right.
responsible for planning, organizing, and managing our actions.
Yeah.
In an ADHD brain, there's often a dysregulation of these key neurotransmitters.
It's like Ethel's running low on supplies and things start to fall apart.
A perfect way to put it. And it's important to understand that dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical,
Right.
as it's often portrayed.
Right.
It's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
It plays a crucial role in motivation, reward, and attention.
Yeah, I remember being surprised by that too.
Yeah,
Dopamine is about so much more than just seeking pleasure.
right. It helps us get things done
Right.
and feel a sense of satisfaction from accomplishing them.
So when those dopamine levels are out of whack,
Yeah,
it can make even the simplest tasks feel overwhelming.
exactly.
Right.
And it can create a cycle of procrastination and feelings of inadequacy.
Now, the book also mentions a second ring of ADHD symptoms.
Yeah,
These are experiences that aren't officially listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5,
right.
but are commonly reported by those with ADHD.
That's a good point. It's important to acknowledge that ADHD can manifest in ways that go beyond the textbook criteria.
So tell us more about these less talked about experiences.
One that many people with ADHD struggle with is emotional dysregulation. This can involve frequent mood swings, heightened sensitivity to criticism, and difficulty managing strong emotions.
It's like their emotional volume is set to 11.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
They may experience intense emotions more frequently and have a harder time regulating their responses.
Another one that really resonated with me is time blindness.
Oh, yeah.
The book describes it as a nearsightedness to the future, which I think captures that feeling of being stuck in the present moment. It's like time just slips away.
Time blindness can make it incredibly challenging to plan, estimate how long things will take,
Right.
and manage schedules effectively.
Right.
It's a common source of frustration and stress for many people with ADHD.
And then there's the ever-present issue of sleep problems.
Yes.
I relate to this one so much.
Yeah.
The author's childhood bedtime struggles really resonated with me.
Uh-huh.
I was also the kid who would do anything to avoid going to sleep.
Yeah, difficulty falling asleep, a delayed sleep phase, and frequent co-occurring sleep disorders are all incredibly common in ADHD.
It's a vicious cycle, too, because poor sleep can exacerbate ADHD symptoms,
Yes.
making it even harder to focus, manage emotions, and function effectively during the day.
Absolutely. Now, there's another experience that's frequently discussed online and in the ADHD community,
Okay.
though it's not an official diagnosis,
Yeah.
rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD.
This one seems to be particularly prevalent on social media platforms like TikTok,
Yes.
where people share their experiences of feeling intensely sensitive to criticism and rejection.
While it's a widely used term,
Yeah.
it's important to note that there's still debate in the scientific community
Okay.
about whether RSD is a distinct condition or a manifestation of other mental health issues, including ADHD.
It's important to be cautious about self-diagnosing based on what we see online.
Definitely. If you're experiencing those feelings of intense sensitivity,
Right.
it's essential to talk to a mental health professional
Right.
to get an accurate diagnosis and develop appropriate coping strategies.
And let's not forget that ADHD often comes with the added challenge of comorbidities.
You're right. It's not uncommon for people with ADHD to also experience anxiety,
Right.
depression, or other mental health conditions,
Yeah.
which can make managing their symptoms even more complex.
It's like having multiple puzzle pieces that need to fit together.
Exactly. Now, the book also delves into how the internet, particularly social media,
Yeah.
is playing a significant role in how people understand and experience ADHD.
This is where things get really interesting.
Right.
It's like the Wild West of ADHD information out there.
The book acknowledges both the positive and negative aspects of this trend.
Okay.
On the one hand, it's incredible that platforms like TikTok have raised awareness
Right.
and created online communities where
Yeah.
people with ADHD can connect and feel validated.
Yeah, it's like finally finding a place where you feel seen and understood.
But on the flip side, there's a lot of misinformation floating around online,
Yeah.
which can lead to self-diagnosis and potentially harmful advice.
For sure.
The book even mentions a study that found a significant percentage of TikTok videos on ADHD contain misleading information.
It's a good reminder to be discerning consumers of information and to consult with qualified professionals for diagnosis and treatment.
Absolutely. Speaking of diagnosis, the book provides some much-needed reassurance
Yeah.
about the anxieties that can arise
Right.
after receiving an ADHD diagnosis, especially as an adult.
Because let's face it, it can be a lot to process.
Yes.
I remember feeling a mix of relief, validation, and fear
Mm-hmm.
when I was first diagnosed.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean for me? Am I making this up?
The book normalizes those feelings.
Yeah.
It's common to worry about being a fake or letting ADHD define your identity.
The author's own experience with those fears really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and acceptance.
Right.
It's a process and it takes time.
Now let's shift gears and talk about something that's really important. Strategies for managing ADHD in everyday life.
Okay.
The book offers a wealth of tips and tricks.
Yes.
But before we dive in, I think it's worth mentioning that what works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works best for you
Right.
and your individual needs.
Right. So what are some of the highlights from the book's ADHD toolkit that you found particularly insightful?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is accepting limitations.
Okay.
It's a powerful concept that can be really liberating.
This really hit home for me too.
Yeah.
It's about learning to choose your battles wisely. You don't have to fight every battle.
Right.
It's okay to let some things go.
Exactly. Focus your energy on what truly matters.
Right.
And accept that you can't do everything perfectly.
That's such a crucial mindset shift for many people with ADHD.
Yeah.
Who often struggle with perfectionism and feelings of inadequacy.
The book also emphasizes the importance of seeking support.
Okay.
Therapy, ADHD coaching, support groups, they can provide invaluable guidance and tools.
It's like having a team of experts in your corner
Yes.
cheering you on.
And of course, there's the power of exercise.
I have to admit, this is one area where I still struggle.
Yeah.
I loved how the book shares the author's relatable struggles and solutions when it comes to getting yourself moving.
It's a reminder that even with the best intentions,
Yeah.
finding motivation to exercise can be tough.
Yeah.
Especially with ADHD.
For sure.
But the benefits are undeniable.
Right.
Regular physical activity can help regulate mood, improve focus,
Yeah.
and boost those all-important dopamine levels.
I'm definitely taking notes on that one.
Yeah.
The book also talks about nutrition
Yes.
and its role in managing ADHD symptoms.
Eating a balanced diet and having regular meals can help stabilize energy levels, improve focus,
Yeah.
and reduce those impulsive cravings
Right.
that can sometimes derail healthy habits.
I loved the tip about visually organizing the fridge
Oh, yeah.
to make healthy choices more accessible.
Yeah.
It's like a little nudge in the right
Well,
direction.
it's about setting yourself up for success.
And then there's sleep hygiene, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's crucial for everyone, but even more so for those with ADHD.
Establishing consistent sleep routines and creating a calming bedtime environment are essential.
Yeah.
The book even delves into things like bright light therapy
Right.
and blue light blocking glasses as potential strategies.
It's about taking sleep seriously
Yeah,
and experimenting to find what works best for you.
absolutely. Now let's talk about one of my favorite parts of the book, organizational systems.
I'm all ears.
There are so many creative ideas.
Yeah.
The one that really grabbed me was the chore charm bracelet system.
I love that.
It's brilliant.
Mhm.
Each charm represents a different chore.
Okay.
And as you complete a task, you move the charm to the other side of the bracelet.
It's like gamifying your chores. I love that idea.
It's a visual reminder that makes even mundane tasks a bit more fun.
For sure.
And the book also talks about habit stacking,
Right.
which is a great way to incorporate new habits into your routine.
It's about linking a new habit to an existing one, making it easier for your brain to adopt it.
Then there's the importance of minimizing distractions.
I definitely do to work on that.
Ah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. And the book also suggests creating one-stop shops for frequently used items like keys, wallets, and phones
Yeah.
to streamline your routine.
These are all such great practical tips.
Yeah.
And the best part is they're adaptable.
Yeah.
You can pick and choose the strategies that resonate with you and fit your lifestyle.
Now let's talk about something that often comes with a lot of baggage. ADHD medication.
Oh, yeah.
I know there are a lot of misconceptions and fears surrounding this topic,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to stimulants.
It's like a whole other layer of complexity.
The book does a fantastic job of separating fact from fiction and dispelling some of those common myths.
Right.
It reassures readers that stimulants,
Yeah.
when prescribed and monitored correctly,
Right.
are safe and effective for many people with ADHD.
That's a really important message.
Yeah.
There's often so much stigma and misinformation surrounding these medications.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that they're not a quick fix, but rather a tool that can help manage symptoms and improve daily functioning.
The book also explains how these medications work,
Right.
increasing dopamine and noradrenaline levels in the brain
Mm-hmm.
to boost focus, attention, and executive function.
It also talks about the different types of ADHD medication available,
Yes.
both stimulants like methylphenidate and amphetamines,
Right.
and non-stimulants like atomoxetine, guanfacine, and clonidine.
It acknowledges the potential side effects and risks of these medications,
Yeah.
emphasizing the importance of working closely with a doctor
Right.
to monitor any side effects and adjust dosage as needed.
Yeah.
The author even shares her personal experience
Hmm.
with the potential risk of stimulants when they're not managed carefully.
Right.
A story about dehydration and caffeine interaction
Oh, wow.
that could have ended badly.
It's a good reminder to take medications seriously and
Yes,
follow your doctor's instructions carefully.
absolutely. No, there's one more important area I want to touch on
Okay.
that I feel is particularly relevant to our deep dive today.
Yeah.
The impact of ADHD on self-esteem and body image.
The book addresses this in a very personal way, sharing the author's own struggles with body image and disordered eating, which is something I think many people with ADHD can relate to.
It's a reminder that ADHD can impact many areas of life,
Yeah.
including how we see ourselves in our bodies.
And the book emphasizes the importance of seeking professional help if you're struggling with eating disorders or body image concerns.
Yes.
Now, despite all the challenges, it's essential to remember that ADHD isn't just about deficits.
Right.
The book beautifully explores the idea that ADHD comes with unique strengths too.
Yes.
That ocean brain, as the author calls it, can be both a source of creativity and a challenge to navigate. I
Absolutely.
love this part. It's like a superpower in disguise.
Exactly. Imagine a brain that's constantly exploring,
Right.
making connections, and
Yes.
overflowing with ideas.
That's the power of the ocean brain. It's about finding ways to harness that energy
Yeah.
and channel it into something positive.
And let's not forget the enthusiasm and passion
Yeah.
that so many people with ADHD bring to their pursuits.
It's about celebrating those strengths and finding ways to use them to our advantage.
Well, it seems like we've explored quite a bit in this first part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
from the different presentations of ADHD and the science behind it, to the practical strategies for managing symptoms and embracing those ocean brain strengths.
We also talked about the importance of seeking support, finding the right treatment,
Yeah.
and remembering that living well with ADHD is a journey, not a destination.
But before we move on to part 2, I think it's important to acknowledge that ADHD isn't always sunshine and roses.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. While we focused on the internal experiences of ADHD,
Yeah.
it's crucial to acknowledge that the condition can have significant external consequences as well.
It's like there's this ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD doesn't just impact our thoughts and feelings.
Right.
It impacts our actions and interactions with the world around us.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. You're absolutely right. It's easy to focus on what's happening inside our heads, but sometimes ADHD can spill over and have very real consequences in the outside world.
It's a little unsettling when you realize it's not all fun, ocean brain, creativity, and short charm bracelets.
Yeah.
Sometimes those ADHD traits can lead to situations that are downright scary.
Exactly. And one area where those consequences can be quite serious is in safety and risk-taking behavior. The book touches on this a bit,
Right.
but it's worth diving deeper.
What kind of risks are we talking about specifically? I mean, everyone makes mistakes sometimes, right?
Of course, but research has shown that people with ADHD, particularly those with the hyperactive impulsive type, are more prone to accidents and injuries.
Okay.
It can range from, minor mishaps to more significant incidents.
There's that story in the book where the author accidentally superglues her foot to her shoe.
No.
It's a funny story,
Yeah.
but it also made me cringe a little.
It's a lighthearted anecdote, but it illustrates how that impulsive act first, think later tendency can backfire.
And it's not just about clumsiness or forgetfulness.
Yeah.
The book mentions studies linking ADHD to risky driving behaviors, too.
Yes. Studies have shown that people with ADHD may be more likely to speed, run red lights,
Right.
or engage in other dangerous driving habits.
Yeah.
Which obviously increases the risk of accidents.
It's a stark reminder that ADHD isn't just a personal struggle.
Right.
It can have real-world implications for public safety, too.
Absolutely. And it's not limited to driving. People with ADHD might be more prone to unintentional injuries in general,
Right.
whether it's at home, work, or during leisure activities.
It makes sense when you think about how ADHD brains are often wired for novelty and excitement,
Yeah.
which can sometimes lead to impulsive actions without fully considering the potential consequences.
Now let's move beyond physical safety and look at other areas where ADHD can have a big impact. One that often gets overlooked is financial management.
Oh, tell me about it. I know firsthand how ADHD can make it a nightmare to manage money responsibly.
You're not alone. Many people with ADHD struggle with sticking to budgets,
Yeah?
paying bills on time, and controlling impulsive spending. It's like that impulsivity we talked about earlier.
Right.
It can extend to our wallets.
Ugh, it's the worst.
Yeah.
I remember one time, well, let's just say it involved an online shopping spree and a credit card bill I'd rather forget.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
For sure.
And those financial struggles can lead to debt, stress, and even legal issues.
The book briefly mentions the economic consequences of ADHD.
Yeah.
Both for individuals and for society as a whole. It's a topic I hadn't really considered before.
It's a crucial aspect of this conversation. Studies have shown that people with ADHD often face challenges in the workplace.
Okay.
They might struggle with organization, time management, and following through on tasks,
Right.
which can lead to job instability and fewer opportunities for advancement.
It's like they're constantly hitting invisible roadblocks in their careers.
And that not only impacts their personal finances,
Yeah.
but also has broader economic repercussions for society.
How so?
Well, if someone with ADHD is struggling to maintain employment or reach their full earning potential,
Right.
it can lead to lower productivity, increased reliance on social safety nets, and higher healthcare costs.
It's like a ripple effect that extends outward from the individual.
The book actually cites a pretty staggering statistic from a U.S. study.
Okay.
The estimated annual economic burden of ADHD is somewhere between $196 billion and $365 billion.
Wow, that's a massive number.
It really highlights the significant economic impact of this often misunderstood condition.
It also underscores the importance of early diagnosis and treatment,
Yes.
not just for the individual's well-being, but for society as a whole.
Early intervention is key. It can equip people with ADHD
Yeah.
with the coping skills and support they need to thrive in all areas of life, including their careers.
Now, we've talked about risks and economic impacts, but let's not forget the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the unwelcome guests crashing our brain party.
Ah, you're talking about comorbidities, those additional conditions that often accompany ADHD.
Exactly. It's like ADHD rarely travels alone.
You're right. It's common for people with ADHD to also experience anxiety,
Right.
depression, substance abuse issues,
Yeah.
and even eating disorders, as we discussed earlier.
It's like having a whole bunch of puzzle pieces that
Yeah.
need to fit together, making the picture even more complex.
And those co-occurring conditions can make managing ADHD even more challenging.
Yeah.
The symptoms can overlap and intertwine, making it difficult to tease out what's what.
It's like trying to untangle a giant knot.
And it's not just mental health either. The book mentions research suggesting a link between ADHD and physical health problems like heart disease,
Okay.
obesity, and some types of cancer.
That's concerning. What's the connection there?
Researchers believe it might be due to factors like poor sleep,
Right.
unhealthy eating habits, difficulty managing stress, and the challenges of maintaining a consistent exercise routine.
It's another reminder that ADHD isn't just a brain thing.
Yeah.
It impacts our whole being, mental, emotional, and physical.
Absolutely. Now, before we get too bogged down in the potential downsides, it's important to remember that ADHD is not a life sentence.
Right. There's hope and there's help available.
Exactly. With the right support,
Yeah.
treatment, and coping strategies,
Yeah.
people with ADHD can absolutely lead fulfilling and successful lives.
It's about understanding your own unique challenges and finding what works best for you.
The book emphasizes that living well with ADHD is an ongoing journey of self-discovery, acceptance, and learning to navigate the world with a different kind of brain.
You mentioned earlier that ADHD can sometimes be misdiagnosed, especially in children.
Right.
What are some of the other conditions that might be mistaken for ADHD?
That's a great question. There are a few culprits that share some overlapping symptoms,
Okay.
which can complicate the diagnostic process. One of the most common is anxiety.
Anxiety can definitely masquerade as ADHD in some ways.
Both conditions can involve difficulty concentrating, restlessness,
Right.
and even some impulsive behaviors.
Okay.
However, the underlying causes and treatment approaches are different.
So how can you distinguish between the two?
Well, with anxiety, the core issue is excessive worry and fear. The inattention and restlessness are often driven by anxious thoughts and a sense of unease.
Right.
With ADHD, the inattention and impulsivity stem from a fundamental difference in brain wiring and executive functioning.
It's like with anxiety, the brain is stuck in fight or flight mode.
Yeah,
Whereas with ADHD, it's more like the brain's control panel is a bit glitchy.
that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
Another condition that can sometimes be confused with ADHD is depression.
Really? How so?
Well, depression can lead to low energy, difficulty concentrating,
Okay.
and changes in sleep patterns, which can resemble some of the inattentive symptoms of ADHD.
It's like the brain is running on low power mode when it's depressed.
Exactly. And in some cases, the symptoms of depression might actually be masking underlying ADHD,
Yeah.
making it even harder to diagnose.
So if someone is experiencing symptoms that could be ADHD,
Yes.
it's crucial to seek a thorough evaluation from a qualified professional who can rule out other possibilities.
Absolutely. It's also important to note that some people might have both ADHD and another condition.
Okay.
Like anxiety or depression, it's not always in either a situation.
Right. It's about getting a comprehensive assessment to figure out what's really going on.
Now let's move beyond mental health conditions, learning disabilities.
Okay.
Like dyslexia can sometimes be mistaken for ADHD too.
I can see how that might happen. How can a learning disability look like ADHD?
Well, if a child is struggling to keep up in school, they might exhibit behaviors that resemble inattention or hyperactivity. They might fidget, daydream,
Right.
or have trouble following instructions.
Yeah.
But the root cause is a difficulty with reading or processing information, not ADHD.
It's like they're trying their best, but facing a roadblock they can't quite overcome.
Exactly. And sometimes a child's temperament or personality can be mistaken for ADHD.
Okay.
Some kids are just naturally more energetic, impulsive,
Right.
or easily distracted than others.
It's like they were born with their motors running.
Right. But it's crucial to differentiate between typical variations in temperament and the persistent impairing symptoms of ADHD.
Yeah.
If a parent or teacher is concerned, it's always wise to err on the side of caution and seek a professional evaluation.
Yeah, one of the most thought-provoking aspects of the book is the idea of ADHD as not just a disorder, but potentially an identity.
Yeah.
I found this really fascinating.
Me too. It challenges the traditional, purely negative view of ADHD.
Right.
The book explores the concept of having an ocean brain, a brain that's vast, deep, and constantly exploring.
I love this metaphor. It's like having a brain that's wired for creativity, making connections and seeing the world from a different perspective.
And while that can make it difficult to focus on one thing at a time, it can also be an incredible source of strength and innovation.
The book celebrates those ADHD strengths. The hyper-focus, the out-of-the-box thinking, the enthusiasm, the passion. It's a reminder that we're not just our deficits, we're also our strengths. And those strengths can be pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It's about finding ways to leverage those strengths and navigate the world in a way that honors your unique brain wiring.
The book focuses mainly on medication. But I think it's important to point out that there are many other approaches to managing ADHD.
You're right. Medication is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's not the only option. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, can be incredibly effective in helping people with ADHD develop coping mechanisms, improve executive functioning skills, and manage their emotions.
And the book mentions ADHD coaching. Which is a more practical, goal-oriented approach.
ADHD coaching helps individuals with ADHD organize their lives, set priorities, and achieve their goals. It's like having a personal trainer for your brain, helping you build those executive functioning muscles.
I love that analogy. It really captures the essence of ADHD coaching.
And let's not forget the importance of lifestyle modifications. Simple things like exercise, good nutrition, and quality sleep can make a world of difference.
They're the foundation for managing ADHD effectively.
And then there are all sorts of tools and techniques that can help too. Calendars, reminders, breaking down tasks into smaller steps. Minimizing distractions. It's about finding what works best for you and building a system that supports your unique needs.
And I can't stress enough how valuable support groups and online communities can be.
They're like a lifeline for many people with ADHD. Connecting with others who truly understand the challenges and triumphs of living with this condition can be incredibly validating and empowering.
It's about finding your tribe, those people who get it.
Exactly. Those communities offer a sense of belonging, support, and shared understanding that can be hard to find elsewhere.
And let's not forget the power of self-education.
Oh, absolutely.
There are so many resources available: books, articles, podcasts, websites.
Yes.
Arming yourself with knowledge about ADHD can make you feel more in control of your journey.
It's about becoming your own advocate.
Yeah.
And seeking out the information and support that you need.
Now, as we wrap up this second part of our deep dives, I think it's important to shift our focus to something that can feel incredibly daunting, especially for adults who suspect they may have ADHD. The journey of seeking a diagnosis.
It's understandable.
It can feel like a huge mountain to climb.
Right.
Especially if you've been carrying the weight of undiagnosed ADHD for years, wondering why things feel so much harder for you than for others.
It's like trying to navigate a maze without a map, like you said earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's break down that journey into manageable steps, starting with that initial aha moment when you realize there might be something more going on than just being disorganized or a bit spacey.
I think for a lot of adults who are just starting to suspect they might have ADHD, that first step of seeking a diagnosis can feel really overwhelming.
It's understandable. It can feel like a huge mountain to climb, especially if you've been carrying the weight of undiagnosed ADHD for years, wondering why things feel so much harder for you than for others.
It's like trying to navigate a maze without a map, like you said earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's break down that journey into manageable steps.
Okay.
Starting with that initial aha moment, when you realize there might be something more going on than just being disorganized or a bit spacey. I think that moment of recognition can be so powerful. It's like a light bulb going off. Suddenly things start to make sense in a way they never did before.
And that's where resources like The Year I Met My Brain,
right,
or even reputable online sources can be so helpful. It's about having a name for your experiences, something you can research and learn more about.
The book talks about the role of social media in this process, too.
Yeah.
It's interesting how platforms like TikTok have become these unexpected hubs for ADHD awareness.
It's a double-edged sword, of course. While it's great that these platforms are raising awareness and helping people connect the dots between their struggles and ADHD, it's crucial to remember that self-diagnosis is never a substitute for professional evaluation.
Right. Social media can be a great starting point, but it's essential to seek guidance from a qualified professional. So once you have that inkling that ADHD might be a factor, what's the next step?
Well, the ideal scenario is finding a mental health professional who specializes in ADHD.
Right.
Particularly adult ADHD.
Okay.
They'll have the expertise to conduct a comprehensive assessment and make an accurate diagnosis.
But finding the right specialist can be tricky, especially with long wait lists and limited access to mental health care in many areas. It can be a real source of frustration.
You're not wrong. It can feel like navigating a bureaucratic maze sometimes, but it's important not to give up.
So what are some practical steps people can take to find the right support?
A good starting point is your primary care physician.
Okay.
They can rule out other medical conditions that might be causing similar symptoms and can often provide referrals to mental health professionals.
And if you don't have a primary care physician or if they're not well-versed in ADHD, there are other avenues to explore, right?
Absolutely. Many countries have mental health organizations or advocacy groups that can offer guidance and resources for finding ADHD specialists. Online directories of mental health professionals can be helpful too.
It's about being your own advocate and doing your research. And don't be afraid to ask for a second opinion if you feel like you're not getting the answers you need.
Now, once you've found a specialist, what can you expect during the diagnostic process?
Yeah.
Well, it typically involves a comprehensive assessment
Okay.
that might include interviews, questionnaires, and even some cognitive tests.
It's like those brain games where you have to remember sequences or solve puzzles under pressure. Not my favorite.
They can be challenging.
Yeah.
But they're designed to assess things like attention, memory, and executive function.
Right.
The clinician will also want to gather information about your developmental history, childhood experiences, and any family history of ADHD.
It's like piecing together a puzzle to get a full picture of your unique brain and how it operates.
And it's important to remember that a diagnosis isn't just about checking boxes on a list.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how ADHD is impacting your life, your relationships, and your well-being. It's about finding answers and hopefully some relief. It's about understanding yourself better.
Now, getting a diagnosis is a big step, but it's just the beginning. The real journey starts afterward when you begin exploring treatment options and figuring out what works best for you.
That can feel like a whole other challenge. So what are some of the resources and support systems available for people with ADHD, especially adults who are newly diagnosed?
Well, as we discussed earlier, therapy can be incredibly valuable. Cognitive behavioral therapy in particular
Hmm.
can equip people with ADHD with practical coping skills
Right.
and strategies for managing their
It's
symptoms.
like learning a new set of tools to navigate those everyday challenges.
Exactly. And there are therapists who specialize in ADHD coaching,
Right.
a more goal-oriented approach
Yeah.
that focuses on practical skills like organization,
Mm.
time management, and goal setting.
It's like having a personal trainer for your brain, helping you build those executive functioning muscles. I love that analogy. It really captures the essence of ADHD coaching.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are support groups and online communities.
Those can be lifesavers.
Absolutely. Connecting with others who understand the unique struggles and triumphs of living with ADHD
Right.
is incredibly validating. It creates a sense of belonging and shared experience.
It's like finding your tribe people who speak your language.
And there are many organizations and advocacy groups dedicated to ADHD that provide valuable resources, information, and educational materials. They're like one-stop shops for all things ADHD.
It's like having a whole team of experts and cheerleaders in your corner.
And let's not forget the power of self-education. There are so many books, articles, podcasts, and websites that offer insights and support for people with ADHD.
It's about arming yourself with knowledge and taking an active role in your journey.
And remember, this journey doesn't end with finding the right treatment or support system. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery, learning to live well with ADHD, and celebrating those amazing ocean brain strengths.
I love how the book reframes ADHD, not as a limitation, but as a different way of being in the world, a way that comes with its own unique challenges and rewards.
It's about embracing those differences and finding ways to thrive in a world that wasn't always designed for our kind of brains.
Well, it seems like we've covered just about everything in this deep dive into the world of adult ADHD.
We've explored the science, the symptoms, the challenges, the strengths, and the resources available.
I've learned so much from this conversation, and I hope our listeners have too. If any of what we've discussed resonates with you, we highly recommend checking out The Year I Met My Brain by Matilda Boseley. It's a fantastic resource for anyone navigating the world of adult ADHD. And if you could choose one ocean brain superpower to embrace, what would it be? How would you use it to make the world a little brighter? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and helpful.